those things that you love and that joy then turns into ways that you can help other people. And also, you linked back to being brave earlier. Well, now when those things have happened to you, and because you're, with me being poorly and then coming out the other side, now I just feel like, well, I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to give that a go. And if it doesn't work, and I'll just move on to something else. But the reason I feel like that is because whatever I'm doing, when I'm saying I'm just going to give that a go, I'm just going to try that, even if I'm a bit scared, I think, but it's stuff I love, and it's me, and it's the stuff that really makes me happy.
This is episode 8 of the Make Movement Matter podcast. When today's guest really prioritised a certain type of movement in her life, she managed to climb out of a very tough time in her life that she recognises is sadly all too common for many. When I saw the film about Katie Magg's journey, I could really identify with parts of her story. The title, Tonic of the Sea, is so apt, and since becoming well, she has embraced some amazing opportunities and is now truly making a difference. For those needing a dose of inspiration and positivity, hearing how Katie's life has changed can't fail to help you make changes. My first question to Katie was to ask her how she feels when she's moving around in the sea.
Wow, I just love being in the sea, obviously. I'd snorkel constantly if I could. So, the feeling for me is it's another world under the water, isn't it? And if you can get comfortable under there, a lot of people are quite fearful of it, but if you can get comfortable and you're in that comfortable space and you feel safe, it's incredible because you're weightless, especially in a wetsuit. I'm weightless in the water. And as well as the surroundings, I feel like I'm flying through an underwater forest most of the time. It's an experience you can't explain to people, and it's very fluid. Obviously, I travel. It's just because you're weightless. It's such an amazing feeling. So there's a bit of movement, while I'm finning along under the ocean, and it's a lovely feeling because you don't really feel pain. There's no, it's an amazing activity because of the weightlessness. Really, it just takes all that pressure off your body and all that stress off your body. I think you can fully relax into it once you feel comfortable in the sea. And I say that a lot to people that I take snorkeling, that once you get comfortable with it and you can, it's a bit like learning to drive. Once you've kind of gone into that autopilot of snorkeling and you feel really comfortable, then you just get all these amazing sensations, especially regarding movement. It's an incredible space to be in. It really is.
Oh yeah. I mean, any of my experiences of underwater things, I love the floating word and the fact that you sort of almost flying, because that's what we can't do. Obviously on dry land we are so sort of heavy, and as you say, any of the problems we have, we can sort of feel them weighing us down, whereas in water, and you're so distracted by what you're seeing. And on your Instagram I see so many incredible things, and I often think this just doesn't look like the UK. You're currently you're a snorkeling instructor. That's one of your many hats that you wear, and you're off the Cornish coast.
Yes.
Whereabouts are you?
So I'm in Penzance in Cornwall. So it's, we're right at the ends of the earth, and I think that's why. I get a lot of people messaging me all the time with my underwater stuff and saying that can't be in the UK, and I think we're just so lucky. We've got such a beautiful coastline. It's absolutely stunning. And, when you get into, we don't even have to get into summer weather to have good snorkeling conditions. As soon as the sea settles and we lose the swell, the sediment settles and you get this incredible clarity. Sometimes, talking about flying, if you get really clear sea, it can feel like you're not even in water. I mean, it looks like you're not even in water.
I've done a bit of deep, some diving. I did my paddy when I was younger. And I do remember not even being that deep, but looking up at the surface of the water and never quite being able to work out how deep I was. So I was never fearful in the way I thought I would be. And loving that feeling. It was almost like that was the sky. And yet, as you say, you can float. So yeah, it truly is a great place to be, and you're very lucky to be living by the sea, because clearly Oxford, middle of the land, not a chance. But I do get my water time if I can. I'm loving paddleboarding and cold water swimming and so on. So I'm starting to really grasp it, and I go up to Northumberland into the North Sea. It's absolutely freezing all year round. So I get my cold water swimming even in August, but you can't see quite as much there. Anyway, so when you have clients that you are instructing, how did they feel after they've been in, particularly ones who haven't done it very much?
Yeah, so I take, I've been doing it for 3 years now, and I take a variety of people, a lot of local people, people that are on holiday, people that have snorkeled a lot, but they've only ever snorkeled abroad. So I think initially, I think the best bit for me is showing people, because you saying about their reactions, it just makes me so happy. Like, they come out of, they only have to put their face in. I get a lot of, they kind of get in a bit nervous, and then we do a bit of practicing first, so just breathing through the snorkel, just so that people feel comfortable, and they just dip their face in and they straight back up, like, because it's like a magical underwater garden. People, you can't explain it to people, and the reactions on people's faces, I get people, I call it snork talk, because they've got their snorkels in, and all you can hear is them going, "Oh my God, it's beautiful. Oh my God." They're like mumbling, saying how stunning it is. And I spend most of the time out of the water laughing, because it's just pure joy that I just think, yeah, like, it's amazing under there. And
Yeah.
it makes people so happy. And I think that's, it's a big reason why I do it, because
Oh, yeah.
I love any type of being in the water. You saying about diving, or people surf, or I did cold water swimming for a very long time before I came to snorkeling. And just the sensation of being in any body of water is absolutely incredible and very, very good for us. But when we look at the surface of the water, often, even on a very sunny day, we just see surface of water, don't we? And often
Yeah.
it can look very grey and dark and dull. So I think when people put their faces in and they're just kind of shocked by this, what almost looks like Avatar or some type of fantasy video game, it
Yes.
really does. If it's very clear and the visibility is good, people are really kind of dumbfounded by, wow, I didn't know that's been under there. And also, that's been under there, and I haven't spent all of my time under there. It just makes them think, I've lost all this time, and I just want to be under there all the time. And I love that as well. It creates real motivation for them to want to get in more, and they're so excited about going again, and they're asking me where, what are the different places they can go to. I
That's
just love
amazing.
it.
Like
It's
a little
great.
domino effect. You push
Yeah, it
one
really
and
is. There it
diddle-diddle-diddle.
is.
That's what
Yeah,
we want, isn't it? Oh, and so yeah, so you obviously get a lot out of teaching people. You actually work in a college as well.
I do. Yes. Yeah.
You're not teaching people there, or
Yeah. So I'm a
you did
deputy at one of our local FE colleges. So
yes,
I teach 16 to 19-year-olds.
yeah.
Been here for, I guess maybe 13, 14 years. Yeah. So yeah, I've been here a long time, and I'm full time doing that. So it's quite a lot fitting in my snorkeling at the same time. But I think it's just because it brings me so much happiness. I couldn't not do it, really.
Yes.
So yeah, and I teach a bit in kind of health and social care, health sciences, so
Right.
psychology, a bit of mental health, stuff like that. Yeah.
So how long would you say your cold water swimming stint was? I'm sure you still do, but how
I
long
don't
was that?
I don't actually swim anymore, no, and
Oh, okay.
I'm very proud of the people that do in their swimming costumes in the freezing cold. But I started, I'd like to say outdoor sea swimming found me, really, but I was doing it for kind of about 5 years, 5, 6 years, I think, and then I transitioned into snorkeling, and I've never looked back now. And all I do is snorkel in a wetsuit where I'm nice and warm and not freezing cold.
And so what made you start? Because I know these are sort of your recent chapter, even though it's
Yeah.
a nice now, thankfully, a nice long chapter that has kept going.
Yes.
But you've told me that you loved the sea when you were younger.
Hmm.
Was there quite a phase where you weren't using the sea in the same way? And was this a rediscovery? And what took you to that?
Yes, definitely. So I very lucky, grew up in Cornwall, and my dad was a keen kind of snorkeler and always in the sea. So we were always in little kind of Cornish cove beaches after school.
Ah,
Very lucky, walking down lovely dusty paths to little kind of hidden coves, and he'd go in and bring us out crabs and lobsters to
wow.
look at. All very lovely. I mean, he also did a lot of other things, like we'd kind of swim through underwater caves, which was terrifying. We're only about
Oh my
6 years old.
goodness.
I know, amazing. And he was always jumping off like the biggest cliffs, and absolute daredevil. But
And was that just recreationally for him? It wasn't
yeah, just
part of his
fun.
work or anything? No.
No, just fun. So yeah, he actually grew up in London, so he didn't move to Cornwall till he was 16. So he used to
Oh,
kind of swim in the Thames and stuff. So he didn't see the sea till he was 16. And
oh my
obviously,
goodness.
if you look at the sea in Cornwall when you're 16, he said it was just he was faced with this turquoise blue snorkeler's dream. He couldn't believe it. Absolutely, he still talks about it to this day. He's
Yeah.
76 now, and he still talks about it to this day. And I come home all the time, go to his and tell him all the things I've seen because he doesn't go himself anymore. But yeah, so had a lot of by the sea in childhood. But then, you get older, you go to school, teenage years, not interested in that anymore, and hanging out with friends, and then college and uni. And then at 21, I had my son, so I was kind of working then, very, very busy, as we do, don't we? Busy, busy lifestyle, busy time. And as my son got a bit older, got to kind of 9, 10 years old, I had got my deputy job, was very busy doing that. I was also a safeguarding officer at the time. So quite a lot of responsibility at the college that I work at. I was about 35 then, so I'm 42 now. So 35 then, so that kind of mid 30s, key time really for career and children, but then also kind of looking after my dad because he wasn't very well at the time. And then my elder sister got poorly as well. So I was kind of juggling all these things, and you're juggling home life. Was
The sandwich
a
generation, as they
sandwich
call it.
generation, yes.
Yes.
So I was, I'm in the middle, and I've got a son at secondary school.
Mm.
I've also got parent that I'm looking after, and I'm trying to hold down a full-time career, which was quite a, it's quite a serious job a lot of the time, and quite quite busy, and running a home, all of all
That's
the
one
other bits,
thing. That's
all
one
the
thing.
bits that you're doing in between. And yeah, so I at that point I started to suffer with just kind of pain, really, headaches, shoulder pain, lots of kind of aches and pains, then struggling with sleeping. But at the time couldn't make the connection. I felt like I did a bit of exercise back then, but I think it was quite rigid exercise. I was doing quite a bit of running and
Yeah.
torturing myself now. I look back and think, you try to fit it all in, don't you? So I'd be going for these kind of 5 a.m. runs, and then going to work for the full day, and then going and looking after my dad and not getting home till late. But at the time, I thought I was doing all the right things and looking after myself because I'm
Yes.
running,
Ticking
because
the
you're running,
health boxes.
ticking the health
Yes. Yeah.
boxes. And gradually, just colleagues at work started saying, "Oh, are you okay? Like, you just seem really frantic." I was just full of to-do lists all the time and rushing off one place to another, and then started to get kind of strange symptoms, lots of migraines, lots of muscle twitching. So my eyes started twitching because you're tired, which is quite a
Yeah.
common thing, but the twitching kind of spread to my lips, and
Right.
lots of real struggles with sleeping, I think because I just felt so overwhelmed at the time, and so hardly sleeping, which kind of turned into kind of lots of muscular kind of twitching and nervousness going on. But
Right.
still at the time I couldn't place it. I just
So
thought, oh,
your nervous system was going,
yeah. So that's, for me now, I can look back and think, everything was switched on in my body
yeah.
and screaming at me to stop. But because I just had no knowledge of that at the age of 35, I knew about mental health, but because I, did a bit of running, and I was quite young, and I was just used to being busy, I just always thought, well, that wouldn't happen to me. That happens to other people. It just wouldn't happen to me because I'm
And
healthy.
and perhaps not having the connection that what's happening in our heads can present itself in our bodies.
Physically in our
And
body.
actually,
Mm.
the solution isn't always trying to fix the body. Sometimes it's looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, definitely. So, I went through a very long period of time, and I was just in the doctors all the time saying this is physically what, and I had tests and they couldn't find anything wrong. I had ECGs, we went through a rage. If I look back at my medical history then, and I'd hardly ever been to the doctors in my life,
Yeah.
I was returning with lots of anxious things. I was worried about moles, things I'd never even
Okay.
pick up on.
Yeah.
Migraines, all sorts, skin rashes. I was in there, and that just gradually kept progressing. But me being me at the time, I didn't stop. There was no,
Soldiered on, as they
yeah,
say.
I soldiered on because I had too much to do. So I just kept getting up and going to work and kept looking after everybody. And until work colleagues just, were so concerned about me, and I was this.
That's really interesting because it's often not until people who know us well
Mm,
reflect back at us
yes,
what's
yeah,
going on that we
yeah,
actually start to truly see
mm,
ourselves, and
yeah.
yet we can't do it for ourselves very easily.
No, I was actually really stubborn with it. I wouldn't listen to them at all, and they, we luckily we can laugh about it now, and actually it's really been beneficial to me because I can recognise it in other people at work, and say, oh, I can notice that now, and I can notice it in myself
Yeah,
because it never goes, it will never go away. Those things, you'll get back engaged in things again, and it all starts to build, and you think, oh, I'm on top of the world, I can do anything. And then
until
you've got to notice your own triggers, and I notice
yeah.
my own triggers now. But yeah, so it slowly over time, and repeated hospital visits and doctors, they just couldn't find anything wrong with me, and I got signed off work, much to my disgust at the time.
And was that very frustrating that you didn't feel like you knew what was going on, or you also didn't feel like people who should know in theory
mm,
knew what was going on?
yeah, I felt really frustrated because I had physical symptoms. So my twitching evolved into what one neurologist explained to be myoclonic seizures, but with no known cause. And they investigated epilepsy. So I ended up getting quite large body jerks, which were terrifying.
Yeah,
And it would happen when I was in rest. So I would be sat at work talking to people, and I'd suddenly jump like a hypnic
right.
jerk, like when you're falling asleep.
Yes.
And being a reasonably healthy person, I eat well, exercise. I'd never really had anything wrong with me in the past. I was petrified because I thought there is something seriously wrong with me, and they are missing it, absolutely missing it. And so when I was signed off work with stress, I felt really frustrated because I thought, this is not stress. I cannot be getting these physical symptoms, and this is stress. It's absolute lunacy. Or it's exhaustion, or it's my nervous system shutting down. I just was not willing to accept that. Um, and so I was signed off from work. I felt like a complete failure. I felt embarrassed. I kind of retreated into my home and was, even crying, going from someone that was holding large meetings every day. I teach hundreds of students, looking after my dad, give huge meetings in front of lots of people. I'd been reduced to somebody that the thought of making my son's packed lunch for school completely overwhelmed me. That I was just in tears, stood in the kitchen, because I couldn't get my brain to function to create some form of shopping list, and I couldn't bear the thought of getting in the car and going outside and seeing people.
So overwhelmed.
So overwhelmed. I was finished, absolutely finished in that
Just
sense.
done. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that is classic burnout, but
yeah,
as you know, well, as unfortunately most people find, it's only when you look back on it that, as you
yeah.
say, you can see it. You just can't see it in yourself.
Yeah. And it wasn't, I mean, it was reasonably quick in the sense it was over a few months. Because I think when you tell this story, and I've told it a few times, people must think, oh, that happened quickly. It didn't. It crept up
Yeah,
over a long period of time. And it starts with warning signals that I wasn't listening to, and gradually developed, obviously, into something bigger. So, now I'd be able to recognize those kind of symptoms and signs. Still hard to do, but
absolutely.
I can easily recognize it, often in other people, not so much myself. So yeah, so I ended up then kind of in my house because I wasn't sleeping. I looked a shadow of my former self. I had really good friends come to visit me, and they burst into tears. I was really, lost a lot of weight. I was just kind of no color at all, just in my pajamas. And I was so distressed that people would come and visit me, and I'd just burst into tears because I was afraid of myself.
Yeah,
So
and
I'd,
probably afraid of the look in their eyes when they
yes,
saw you.
yeah. Well, I'd become afraid of my own mind because it was tricking me all the time, in the sense of that I felt so down. I never felt like I wanted to take my own life. I wasn't actually convinced that I had depression. I had very serious burnout, and my nervous system had been affected so badly that I was getting physical symptoms of that. So I had extreme exhaustion and
And
burnout.
and the resultant anxiety that comes with that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and absolutely phenomenal anxiety, beyond belief. I was anxious about everything, crossing the road, I think I got stung by a wasp on one of the days, and I'm quite a kind of resilient, I'm in the sea, I snorkel with
Yeah.
seals and all sorts, jumping off cliffs with my dad. And then, I got stung by a wasp, and I'd convinced myself that I was going to be infected by some awful, my brain was so
Yeah.
weak, anything could shake me.
Yeah.
Um, and that, I think, was the kind of scariest bit, was that I was frightened by myself because I couldn't reason it out. That, the reasonable Katie and the resilient Katie had gone, and I couldn't be there for my son. I felt like my son had lost his mum, my sister had lost their sister, my parents had lost me. I was just, completely fragile and destroyed in quite a short space of time, really. So that went on for quite a while, and I just sought out some counselling, and um, took some antidepressants for a while, which I didn't feel did very much, and I was very anxious about taking those.
Mhm.
I have a very dear friend who's a mental health nurse, and it must have taken her about 2 months to convince me to take quarter of a tablet. Um, and I kept putting it on my tongue, taking it back out again, because I was terrified by taking that. I didn't want to take anything. I didn't want to take supplements.
Yeah.
I started doing all the anxious behaviors as well, which was logging all caffeine, logging everything I was eating, logging all different types of supplements, how much sleep I was getting. I got the sleep app, and that was causing more anxiety, but I didn't realize that
Absolutely. Yes.
because I was in a control zone. And actually
Yeah.
what I needed to do was to let go, but I was trying to control everything as
Because
tightly
everything
as I
was
could.
so out of control
Yes.
that you had to control the tiniest of things.
Yeah.
But even by logging it, you're not controlling it.
No, no.
And as you say, I think I have a real issue with too much um, of the sort of analytics and the data that we get.
Yeah.
She says, but my husband bought me a Garmin for Christmas. But it's so interesting. I used to have one a long time ago, and then had spent a long time without. And it's really interesting to analyze how you react to the
Mm,
information you're given that often isn't even that accurate. You can tell various
yeah.
things, and then what you do with that, and it can be such a negative force in your life.
It can. I think it's individual. I think some people cope with it really well, and they really enjoy those types of apps. They're not for me.
It's
I
when
don't.
you come at it though, and it depends on what part in your life you're at. If you're on
Yes,
a
I
good
agree.
phase, I'm sure it's great, and when you're on a bad phase, I think it's not great. So, yeah, but then, as you say, that would be relinquishing control of the things that you thought you had control of at the time.
Yes, definitely. And I really believe that was the way out. I thought, if I can control this thing, if I can do all these things that I'm meant to do to get better,
Mm.
but again, that was all doing, you
And
know.
find that one
And
thing that's probably tipping everything else out. Is it my
yes,
sleep? Is it
is it?
my
Yes.
nutrition? Am I eating early enough? And I blah 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 blah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, alcohol, everything. It was all gone, and it was all to blame. And I was trying to control this outcome. And I think all of that trying. So I was trying to do meditation, trying to do yoga, trying to, all the things to try and fix it. And then I'd often not sleep for days, and that insomnia was absolutely horrific. And I'd lie awake just crying. I could remember
Yeah.
3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd just be sat on my bedroom floor crying because my body had been doing so much of its horrific jerking that I was just exhausted, worn out mentally, physically. Um, and so what started to happen is I started to go out very early in the morning. So about 5 a.m. So luckily I lived near to the sea, but I wanted to go out early because I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't like to see people. I was always a bit upset by how they viewed me when they saw me. So I avoided going out in the daytime. So I started walking to the sea at kind of 5 a.m. and just walking along, and I'd sit often by the sea in a place that is we've got like a promenade, and we've got a kind of rocky reef there called Battery Rocks. And I just sit there. I went there a bit as a kid and as a teenager because we've got an outdoor Lido there, and we'd kind of go
Okay.
there in the summer. And I just sit there while there was nobody there, and often be crying, sitting there on my own in a big, I'd wear a big kind of warm coat. And one morning, a whilst I was sitting there, a gentleman walked past me, and I noticed that he was looking like he was about to go and get in the sea, which I thought looked like madness at the time, because I think it was winter or something. It was kind of, we were just coming out of spring, and he stopped and said, "Oh, are you okay? Like, I've noticed you a couple of times. Are you all right?" And I just didn't want to speak to anyone, so I kind of did a very polite, "Oh no,
But
I'm
what
fine."
an amazing thing to do.
Yeah, no, amazing. And you said, I'm fine. And I tried to kind of scuttle off,
Which
and
you obviously weren't.
no,
To
no,
him,
not
even
fine.
though he doesn't even know
Still,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
still saying fine, obviously not fine. Yeah, so, and kind of scuttled off, and then a few days later, I saw him again, and he said, you should try coming in the sea, because it's been really good for me, and it's good for a lot of people. And um, I said, "Oh no, that's ridiculous. I'm sorry, I'm far too poorly. I'm so unwell. That I really appreciate it, but I'm just too unwell to do anything like that. I'm very weak, and I've not been very well." I tried to explain the story. Anyway, he kind of really persevered, and I ended up meeting a few more of that swimming group. It's quite a long story, but they were all kind of older swimmers. So some of them were, I was 35 at the time. Some of them were 60s. That's not old, but 60s,
Yeah.
70s, all the way up to 80s. And it was a very small group of sunrise swimmers that went in every morning. And I started to notice kind of a few more of them walking past every morning. And this went on for quite a few weeks. And the gentleman that originally, I'd kind of come into contact with, there was two of them actually, but one of them in particular, called Mike, was an ex-lifeguard, and he also used to teach A levels. And he was, he'd been a teacher, so he knew kind of what it was like, the stress of being a teacher. And he kind of took me under his wing, and I ended up making friends with him. But poor him, he was on this awful journey of trying to convince me to talk to him, never mind getting in the sea.
But he
But
persevered.
he
And I love
persevered, and he was
that.
a stranger, just a stranger. I'd never met him before.
Absolutely.
No, he's local, but I'd never met him before. And actually, he lives quite close to me, but I'd never really seen him.
But he's
Um,
obviously from the fact that he teaches and that he's a lifeguard, he's obviously really invested in people and
yeah,
helping people. So
yes.
you picked the right guy.
Well, he picked me.
That
I
he
know.
picked you.
So he was retired. Yeah, he was retired at the time, and just was using swimming, for themselves. And he would go every morning at dawn. And eventually, after this amazing, relationship, that a lovely community relationship that just came out of this, kind of months went by, and I ended up doing, the first time I got in, it was freezing. I didn't really get in, and it took a lot to convince me to get in. And I kind of dipped in, and I got really upset, and I felt terrified. The water looked black, the rocks were all slippy, I was freezing cold. It was actually a really freezing cold day. I'd borrowed somebody's swimming costume. It just all felt, it wasn't this lovely, oh, get in the sea. And it wasn't. It was horror for a few days, and cold. And I was so unwell that I wasn't really there. So I don't really remember it very well. It was almost like I was just going through the motions and going down and meeting Mike. And Mike actually just became a bit of a consistent for me. So it meant that when I'd had really bad nights, I knew that I could get up. It was still dark. I'd put my big protective coat on, and I'd just walk and go and meet Mike. And even if I didn't try and get in the sea, or we just stand and talk, and he was just someone that was listening to me. And it wasn't a family member, it wasn't a doctor, it wasn't a friend. I didn't feel like it was somebody that knew me, that was kind of trying to help or judging my situation. He was just a stranger that was listening, and also had similar experiences to me, life experiences. So yeah, that's how my swimming started. And I ended up swimming most days with Mike and the other group of Battery Rock Sunrise swimmers. And over time, steadily got better, because I ended up having a routine that was an early morning routine. It was moving myself. It was getting outdoors early, gently.
Mm-hmm.
It was getting in the sea. But to begin with, I did progress into a lot of kind of distance, front crawl, outdoor swimming, amazing. But actually, to begin with, the healing bit was just that I was in the sea
Yeah.
with Mike. It was dawn. He'd always be very good at convincing me to say, let's just, on particularly bad days, he'd say, let's just lie on our backs and look at
Just a
the
minute.
stars. Yeah, he'd say, let's just float
Yeah.
and lie on our backs, and let's just look at the clouds and the stars, or the sun coming up, or let's just look at the cormorants flying over our heads.
And that's so it's so clever, because it's getting you to just think, okay, I'll give it a little try. I might as well.
Yes.
And some would potentially see it as him sort of almost giving up his swim for you. And if they were more self centered, let's say, they would perhaps resent that. But clearly, his experience of the sea wasn't just about swimming, it was about being in nature and just experiencing it. And he knew the power of that for how great it made him feel on a daily basis and knew that you would benefit, but wasn't saying any of that to you. He was just letting it happen.
Yeah, amazing. And he was just allowing me. I mean, I could cry honestly talking about Mike because I ended up being in the film Tonic of the Sea with Mike. And it's just something I can keep forever. I mean,
Yes.
I've
It's a wonderful, wonderful film. And that's how
it's a
I,
one
I first came across you. And
yeah, and
there
just that
were
self
tears.
yeah, just that
Yeah.
selflessness really of him. And he was just so gentle all the time and just showing me and reminding me how to be present and not trying to control, not doing. I was
Yeah.
just being. I was just being in nature and absorbing that nature and that wild place that, is Battery Rocks in Penzance. It's amazing kind of wild space, and you do get a lot of kind of wildlife and nature there. Um, so yeah, it was absolutely incredible, really,
And
and such a
sorry, go on.
really important experience. Yeah.
So, given that that was over a period of time, how much do you feel that moving your body, particularly in the outdoors, was a contributing factor to the improvement of your general health?
Oh, a really significant factor because it was the swimming. But I like to say swimming, but it's just the immersion in water. I really think it doesn't matter what type of body of water it is, but also being outdoors,
Yeah.
that I wasn't going outdoors very often. And actually, in the lead up to being unwell, in that kind of frantic time that we talked about, taking children to a child to school, sorry, running a home, having a job, I actually wasn't outdoors a lot. I wasn't outdoors being present. I might have been trying to speed run my way on a 5 o'clock, but that wasn't being
But also
present.
not thinking about
No, I
just
wasn't.
or
I,
thinking too much,
no,
probably actually the opposite, thinking rather than just being, as you said.
yeah, it was all really panicked activity, and actually, the going in the sea and the walk at dawn to the sea was
Beautiful.
was really quiet. And I slowly, as I started to get better, which I couldn't recognize at the time, but I started to realize that I was noticing things because everything had gone. I wasn't aware of anything. I was not in the real world anymore. That's how I felt. And I also had no joy. There was no like, oh, at the weekend we're doing this, or
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to have this for dinner. Even the smallest things, I'm really looking forward to. There was nothing. All of that had gone. I wasn't looking forward to anything. It's kind of really just disappeared from my life. And so on my dawn walk, even things like noticing people turning on their lights because it's pitch black on the walk to the sea, and hearing like the pull of the water on the pebbles. So even that stroll to the sea,
Yeah.
when I was still very unwell, I started to notice that I'd noticed things.
Yes. Your
So
awareness just
yeah, it was
flicked on.
creeping back in because
Yes.
I always explain it as in when I was poorly, my brain had gone from this lovely pink, active, healthy brain to slowly turning grey and dull. That was how it made me feel, that I'd overworked my brain so much, my
Yeah.
mental health, that it had slowly just started to all switch off and shut down in protection of me, really. It was trying
Yes.
to shut me down. So those little
Or
bright
to slow you
sparks
down. Maybe not to shut you
shut
down,
me
but
down.
to
No,
really slow you
slow me
down.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was running at a million miles an hour daily.
Yeah.
Um, and then all these little bright sparks, I always think of it like that. Like my grey brain started to get little sparks again, which was me noticing little bits of joy or things that I like doing. And I really like the idea that actually that rediscovery of the sea with Mike was actually, I didn't realize that at the time, was quite linked to childhood and all those lovely things I liked doing as a child on the beach with my dad, hearing the
Yeah.
gulls, hearing the water.
And interesting that connection with an older man that
Yes,
is protective of you and
yes.
wanting to nurture you, but perhaps not so overtly. It's a lovely connection, that.
Yeah, such an amazing friendship. And like I said, such a gentle friendship in that sense of just
Yeah.
getting me to enjoy what he knew. You made that good point. He knew the benefit of it.
Mm.
I had no idea. I was 35. I was in this whirlwind of career and
And you wouldn't be
home.
told. I think
No,
a lot of the problem we have in life is that we just won't be told things. We
no.
have to find them. But I truly believe that when you find them at the right time, then
Mm.
everything works. It's a bit like a message, it can really resonate at certain points in your life when before you'd heard it over and over and it had meant nothing. And
Yeah.
then suddenly it lands just when you need it. And massive change all of a sudden.
All of a sudden, huge change. It had to there had to be a kind of repeat of my activity, so I did have to keep going. I could have easily,
Yeah.
just decided not to,
And that
but
consistency
something.
was key because it gave you
Mm,
framework, it gave you a structure.
it
And
did.
and was there also perhaps a slight accountability where someone was waiting for you? They
Yes,
would miss you
definitely.
if you weren't there to an extent, even though you perhaps didn't quite want to believe that. You probably felt that draw that a little community would, you were becoming a really important part of that. And sometimes it needs to be a new community to do that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really did. That was a huge thing. I never felt, Mike always says to me, "Oh, you never felt I was pressurizing you." And I said, "No, I just thought, actually, I really want to go, and Mike's waiting for me, and that I almost felt like I was going to miss something by not going."
Yes, a little
So
bit of
that was
FOMO.
a little bit of, yeah. So that was a lovely, and because I wasn't at work anymore,
Mm.
that ended up just being the one thing that I had each day that was mine, and it was about me. And me and Mike would stand sometimes and just watch the sun come up, and sometimes we wouldn't say any words at all,
Mm.
and other times we'd have like little gentle conversations, and we'd see the seals pop up in the distance, and just
That's true friendship. True
true
friendship
friendship.
is when you don't need to fill the gaps
No, we'd
and
stand
you're
there.
peacefully enjoying together and enjoying seeing the joy in the
Yes.
morning in front of you as it was for you.
Yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing. And it wasn't just the swimming, it was all of that. It was
Mm.
that community group that took me under their wing. There was a lot of people in that group that were also retired, some in their 80s, and they all had little stories to share with me. Some had kind of lost people in their lives, some had had really stressful jobs, and I just suddenly had this lovely community of people that really understood my situation. But we also had a thing that we all loved too, which was getting in the sea. And I started telling Mike about all my time, with my dad and the things I'd seen when I was younger. And, it's just reminding me of all of those things, of slowly letting go again of the control and just actually doing something for the pure enjoyment of it. It
Yes.
wasn't a race. We're not
You
trying to
no.
swim any distance. We're just getting in and we're just enjoying what we're seeing.
And actually, that's a really key point that I do talk about a lot because when you find a type of movement, this is sort of putting it in the movement box again, but when you find a type of movement that you enjoy, you're
Hmm.
far more likely to be consistent and keep wanting to do it
Yes.
because
Yeah.
it's not a chore. It's not hard work. You look forward to it. Eventually, as you now looking back, it started to make you feel good. So it's that lovely positive loop
Mm,
where when it's something that, you kind of have to whip yourself to do, you don't really want to get up and do. I mean, why? Why would you? And it's never going to last. So finding that thing by trying things or whatever, or
yeah.
just it happening, being open to
Yeah.
experiences
Mm,
can make such a difference. I just wanted to say that what I love about your story particularly is that it's so relatable to so many people. So many people are incredibly rushed off their feet. They cannot think how they could fit something in, and they don't realize the impact it's having on their entire health. And
mm.
so I love the fact that you've decided to share this over the years. Your film is fantastic. If we can skip forward to now,
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to talk about some of the exciting projects that you are involved in. Um, but one final question on looking back.
Hmm.
Do you see yourself as brave?
Um, I suppose the bravery
Okay, maybe I
came
change it.
from.
Will you allow yourself to see yourself as brave?
Yeah, I think we are braver than we think we are a lot of the time, and it's all that rebuilding, that resilience. That time that I spent in the sea, and then that kind of continued into lots of outdoor swimming and lots of amazing opportunities for me. Like, it's completely reshaped my life. I look
Yeah.
back now, I do not regret having that breakdown at all, or I would not be doing what I'm doing now. I had to break to actually come back as a real version of me and actually live my life the way I want to live my life, what made me ill, I think, was a lot of insecurity, a lot of low self-esteem, a lot of trying to do for everybody else, and not think about me, and not think about what brings me joy, what makes me happy. And slowly all of that doing for other people, not their faults either,
No.
but all of that doing, and sometimes trying to get people's approval. You're doing it to get people's approval. You want to be the best at work, the best. You want, you want that, don't we, for our own egos? We've all got an ego. And it was those things that broke me. And then I had to rebuild all of that confidence and bravery and resilience myself, because it was lost in my breakdown. But lots of good came out of that, because if that hadn't happened to me, I never would have had any of those amazing experiences. And I think actually that experience drove that. It's like a cycle that I would never
It's
have
those
got to this.
dominoes,
It is
isn't
those
it? It's the
dominoes. And
dominoes
yeah.
knocking into each other
Mm.
until yeah.
And I may never have realized it. I could still be going through a life like that. And it taught me to be my own gatekeeper with my own. You have to protect yourself, and you've got to be your own gatekeeper. I've
And
always said that.
exactly, and it's okay to do that. I think
It
the
is
problem
okay,
is,
yeah.
particularly as working mum, you will often and working dad. I mean, it is everyone. You'll often literally prioritize your own health so much lower because you feel like you've just got to keep spinning all the plates,
Yeah,
and being social and all of these things. And hopefully hearing your story, people might recognize a few little light bulbs might go on where they think, oh, that's that's happening to me,
yeah.
and I'm not feeling so great. So they may not be at rock bottom,
Mhm.
but could potentially, hopefully, prevent getting to rock bottom by thinking something's got to give, and
Mm.
I'm going to put myself higher up on that list.
Yeah, and I often, I really tried to think about, because it took me a lot back to thinking about me as being little, and it made me think of myself as little and think, oh, why was I doing that to myself?
Yeah.
Why, it's like an assault on our systems. And, I felt sorry for me.
And
I thought,
almost if you were that little girl, would you, if you were sort of shown yourself then back as a little girl, would you think that's what I want to be when I grow up?
yeah, no, it
No,
wouldn't. No,
no.
no.
I want to be in the sea, playing
Yeah,
and
yeah,
having fun
playing
like
and
I
be
did with my
happy, and
dad. Yeah.
yeah, and be full of joy. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. So, yeah, I think I feel a lot braver and more resilient now and confident, but that's because I think I'm following me and what I actually want to do. And but it took going through that to find that. It was that rediscovery of being, letting go in nature and actually letting go of the control.
Yeah.
I'm quite good now at not being really controlling of things, and just thinking most things turn out
Let it
okay,
be. Yeah.
and let it be. Yeah, but we do get a lot of that by immersing ourselves in nature, because that's something that really came out of my journey, is that we are not separate to nature. We are nature. So there's no
Yes.
wonder why we feel so good being in nature. And that can be the woods, it can be mountains, it can be rivers, streams, lakes, seas. We're not separate to it. We're part
Although
of
we
it.
box ourselves in, and I think because we do live in these structures, we then do mentally separate ourselves from nature because we can't survive outside in the cold for as long, etc. And
Mm.
I think that sort of boxing in, I've talked about it before, as being you're kind of like, it's like you're in the zoo, and you're looking out at where you really wish you wanted to be.
Yeah, yeah.
But because of this modern world, because of jobs and so on,
Mhm.
and wanting to stay warm, we box ourselves in. And being able to know that that's a thing, and being able to get out and instantly, I am very grateful that I do. As soon as I walk out of the door,
Yeah.
I feel different.
Hmm.
Literally within seconds, my perspective on life changes.
Yeah.
I'll often post about me walking around my garden with barefoot on the frosty lawn, which people think is totally insane. But I can change how I feel within seconds. And I
Yeah.
need little hits of that all the
Hmm.
time if I'm to be inside. So, and you have that in spades. I want to ask you, who's Duncan?
Oh, Duncan. Duncan. So since the swimming, I then kind of transitioned into snorkeling, became a snorkel instructor because I kind of recalled all that stuff that just love that showing, the showing people stuff. Because that's what my dad did with us when we were little. I've got a
Mm,
twin sister. I was just about to say that to you because we always say, if in doubt, get out. So if you're ever feeling a bit down or you just feel a bit
love
stressed or a
that.
bit irritable, we always say, if in doubt, just get out and just go and have a walk. And it does work, doesn't it? It's
It
amazing.
really does.
But yeah, so I just love that showing people stuff, and my kind of swimming. I was swimming, and I went from kind of little swimming goggles to my goggles just gradually kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and my suits. I was always swimming in a swimming costume, and prided myself on winter swimming. I think now, oh, I'm a bit cold now. I wear my suit all the time, my big snorkel suit, but yeah, and then my wetsuit started because I just wanted to stay in longer all the time,
Mm.
and so yeah, my goggles got bigger and bigger until I eventually invested in a snorkel mask and a proper wetsuit. And then obviously became a snorkel instructor, and then wanted to share it with lots of other people. And that's kind of how my business turned into snorkel instructing after all of that, which was, absolutely amazing. And so yeah, I think it's that kind of transition, and then showing other people, looking under the water, just brought about that need to conserve what I'm looking at. I was seeing all of this beautiful stuff and thinking, oh, does everybody know this is under here?
Yeah.
In Cornwall, we've got these amazing reefs. We've got incredible amounts of marine life. We've had humpback whales, we've had fin whales, we've had passing orcas going past Land's End, cuttlefish, octopus, you name it, it's out there. It's absolutely incredible. So that kind of really inspired and does inspire in other people, which is part of why I love running my snorkel tours, because it makes people want to protect what they're seeing,
Yes.
because it's stunning, it's beautiful, it's fantasy dream like, often, like I said to you, when it's a clear sea. And then people go away and they think, how can I look after this? I didn't realize
Mm.
it looked like this. I didn't realize it was marine life's home. Sometimes you have to really you have to look at it, don't you, to actually appreciate
Yes.
that
Yes.
things live in it. So yeah, that brought about a lot of conservation kind of projects, and I started volunteering with my local conservation group, which is Mounts Bay Marine Group. I do quite a lot of work for them now, and Cornwall Wildlife Trust. And I started some different projects. So we've got quite a few at the moment, some seagrass and kelp forest monitoring, some doing some recording of cessation echo out in the bay. So we've got some acoustic equipment that records dolphin, whale and porpoise
Oh, wow.
echo, which is amazing to monitor that. And also, just on my own, I started hatching baby cuttlefish. So that's where Duncan comes in. So yeah, I do a lot of photography of adult cuttlefish, but I'd never actually come across some eggs. So it's a lovely story, because I went home and was looking in my book thinking, I always see quite a few cuttlefish, but I've never seen their eggs. So I was looking up their eggs and I think, oh yeah, they look like black grapes. That's a bit of a strange thing. Funny how I've never seen any. And then the very next day I went for a walk on the beach and found a huge clump of eggs. And I was
You're
absolutely amazed.
it's
Like
that
I'd
awareness.
manifested it.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah. I see
It
it,
was amazing.
yeah. When you don't see something, when you become aware of something, it's amazing how suddenly it's everywhere.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so often they'll just dry out. They wash up in storms, and they need to be attached to seaweed because the mum cuttlefish attaches them to seaweed so that they can be submerged in water all of the time. Because as soon as they come out of water, they just dry out, or the gulls will eat them, which I appreciate is the circle of life. So I'm sure the gulls probably do get to eat a lot. But I thought to myself, oh, I've heard about people hatching cuttlefish, so I'm going to give it a go. But really doubted myself and thought, oh, Katie, don't be silly. You can't do this. You're not a marine biologist. How on earth are you going to hatch cuttlefish on your own at home? But I thought, no, I'm going to give this a go. And I was being brave, and I thought, I'm going to give this a go. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to watch it on YouTube. And, how hard can it be? So I ended up finding a guy on YouTube who was a marine biologist who'd been hatching eggs successfully and releasing them back into the wild. And I followed kind of all of the bits that he said. I went and got myself a fish tank from my neighbour, used my bike light off my bike because they like red light because it helps them to think it's nocturnal. So I kind of concocted this kind of hashed together tank and changed the seawater, twice a day. Was sat watching it like this, like I was like a mummy cuttlefish, thinking, please hatch. Went and bought myself a pump because I just read that's what they needed. But really deep down, I thought, this isn't going to happen. Like this, there's no way this is going to happen. There's no way this is going to work. but was just I had like this couple of percent that I was just hopeful. So every morning I'd get up and I was like a mummy, I'd go down and the poor things, if they could see me through their eggs, they've got this big face staring at them every morning. And then one morning I got up and I changed the water in the tank and I disturbed it, and then 3 little cuttlefish swam up to the top. And if you could, I mean, I wish I'd had it recorded, but if you could have seen my face, I was like the proudest mother going. My partner was like, I was like jumping up and down going, there's cuttlefish, I've hatched my own cuttlefish. I was like crazy person. all my neighbours in my street just thought I was absolutely.
They could hear you.
Bonkers, yeah. And after that, I ended up hatching 74 cuttlefish successfully last summer and released them all successfully. And one of them was called Duncan. Sorry, we're getting round to Duncan. And Duncan was an immature, he was just born a little bit too early. I don't know if his egg split while he was in the tank. So he was very, very small, and the others were kind of picking on him a bit. And he was a beautiful little thing. But
he looked a slightly different colour as well. Was he?
Yeah, because I think just because he was so small, really. And I ended up releasing him fine, but I did share some photos and video of Duncan on. I mean, we say we don't. I don't know.
No.
I haven't got that far in being able to tell the difference, the gender difference. But so really amazing. And 74 cuttlefish back into the wild. I'm sure they don't have a great survival rate, but I just thought, what an incredible conservation project. Yeah. And, cuttlefish are quite heavily fished now, which not a lot of people know, because they're sold as false calamari, I think, and for squid ink and things like that, a range of different things. So it's just really important conservation efforts for cuttlefish, because they're incredible creatures, very similar to
octopus. And from your perspective, you didn't think you could do it, but
no.
Another thing, you gave it a try.
I know.
Now, you're really proud, and it's probably hopefully inspired you to think about other projects that you can take on.
Yeah.
And this is, zooming out, this is what it's all about, isn't it? Because
it really is.
When you do make changes in your life, look how much that you have come on. It's fantastic. And now you're clearly so passionate, and it sounds like it's really fulfilling for you. And then and you look so well. You look really healthy, and you sound really happy, which is incredible, because you probably never thought that you would feel like that again at certain points. So I'm really grateful for you sharing your story. So just for other people listening, what would you suggest if they are in difficult times? How can they start to go about making positive changes?
I really think, my own experience is that really don't care what anyone else says or thinks. Can you think of anything that makes you really happy? It doesn't matter if you used to collect beetles when you were a kid and that made you really happy, or, you rode your bike all the time and you remember really loving that, but you just haven't done it anymore. And I just mean little bike rides. I don't mean, we live in a world where it's like, if we're not doing something competing wise and really fast paced and we're not the best at it, then what's the point in doing it?
Yeah.
And I think actually I'm real life proof of that. I don't have any marine qualifications, none, zilch. I teach at a college. I teach psychology and mental health. I don't have any, other than my snorkel instructing course, which I did afterwards. But people would probably look at my Instagram and stuff and think, oh, but she must be a marine biologist. She must have marine qualifications. Yeah, you did. And I don't. All of that has come out of real joy and curiosity.
And those are the main things, because you can have I say this to my kids, you can have all the top qualifications in the world.
You can.
But if you don't have passion and oomph, then you don't feel good about what you're doing. It's about you, isn't it? It's not about those badges of honor. It's about how things make you feel.
Yeah. And then often you've got to be careful about that you then make a business out of the thing that you love. But sometimes that can lead to work. People write books about those things. They run lovely supportive courses. A lot of people do it for wild swimming. Those things that you love and that joy then turns into ways that you can help other people. And also, you linked back to being brave earlier. Well, now when those things have happened to you, and because you're, with me being poorly and then coming out the other side, now I just feel like, well, I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to give that a go. And if it doesn't work, and I'll just move on to something else.
Yeah.
But the reason I feel like that is because whatever I'm doing, when I'm saying I'm just going to give that a go, I'm just going to try that, even if I'm a bit scared, I think, but it's stuff I love, and it's me, and it's the stuff that really makes me happy. So
I want to do that.
So I want
So
to
I'm
do
going
it.
to push myself a
Yeah.
little bit. It's going to feel a bit tough.
Yeah.
I'm going to be fearful because it's normal to be fearful,
Yeah.
but it might just take me somewhere.
Yeah, and move you forward somewhere into still in doing things that, you know, you want to be doing, which is amazing, isn't it? Because that's how we live our happiest existences. And, you know, I do get a lot of people say to me, yeah, but you're lucky, you know, how do you find what you like doing if you don't know? Like, I just don't know. But I didn't know.
No,
I would
didn't
never have thought of
Yeah.
being, you know, doing snorkeling. Yes, it took a breakdown for me to find that path, but the first path was swimming, and then it changed. And, you know, people always say, a lot of people still think I swim, and I don't. And they say, oh, I can't believe you don't swim anymore. That's amazing. Or they say to me, how's swimming? And that's a really important thing as well, is that we don't put ourselves in just one box. You know, I might be doing snorkeling and snorkel instructing now, but that could change into something else, because we're always growing and moving. We're always moving in life. We're always growing, and just go with that and let that be.
And that's exactly it. As you said before, your words, just letting it be, not pushing, not forcing, not searching, and just being open and aware to opportunities that, when you are open and aware, sometimes start to come your way, and you notice them, and you have a little bit of confidence and bravery to just take that opportunity. Or, like you're saying, thinking of something that, okay, I've never tried paddleboarding. I've seen that people paddleboard, or I've never tried snorkeling, but I've seen that they do it and they look like they're having fun. So I'm just going to give it a shot. And that's everything.
Definitely. And that's been so evident. You know, I'm so lucky now. I take so many people snorkeling over the summer months.
Can I come?
Yes, of course you can. Yeah. I take so many people snorkeling, and so many of them, and I'm sorry, I've never tried it before. I'm petrified, but I just, you know, my friend booked it, or I really like the sea, but I'm just a bit scared about going underneath, but I just want to try it. Or a lot of them are swimmers, and they say, I'm just a bit scared of seaweed, but I just want to get better with that. And then they go off and they're like, Katie, I love snorkeling. And I hear from them like 3 weeks later, and they're like, I've been here, here, here. I've been in here. I saw this, 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 and this. And suddenly they found this new activity that they never thought they'd love. And, you know, that can lead to anything. They could end. I've had people message me saying, I'm now doing seaweed pressing. One lady was going out and collecting all the kelp and putting it in her bath. Another guy got really interested in the different types of crabs that we have locally that he was seeing. So he started making a big scrapbook of them. You know, I had a surfer that suddenly wanted to change his kind of surfing stuff into doing more kind of snorkel and surfing and mixing his. And I just thought that's really inspired people to go away and take all those bits of the sea and maybe create a business, but it doesn't have to be that. It's just creating a hobby.
And literally talking about it to friends. And one person talks to another person, talks to another person. And that's why I do this podcast as well.
Yes,
because
well done.
You've got to talking about these things, which can feel quite uncomfortable. And, you know, they're not about great times in our lives. It's so important so that people think, maybe I'll just try that one thing.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree.
I'm so grateful for you joining me. It's been a really lovely conversation. And yes, you are truly inspiring. And can I come to Cornwall, please?
Of course you can. Of course you can.
Because I would love to join you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, anytime. We'll choose the nice walk. Well, the best months really are kind of July and August, because we get incredible, lots of jellyfish in, like amazing, lovely clear sea. So you are welcome to come anytime.
Thank you so much, Katie.
That's all right, my lovely. Thank you for having me.
I always love hearing my guests' movement stories or learning from them about topics they're passionate about. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I'm truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.